Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Arise TV is what this is now, and not just Arise Church, but we are online and super excited to be with you. If you're new to our church, my name is Brent. I get the privilege of being the lead pastor at Arise Church, and so excited you're watching this online. We're going to continue to experience God together online, which, you know, we love it in person, and God's presence is certainly very impactful in person, but it also can be that way online. And so, hey, as we get started, we always want to celebrate. It's a custom of our church, and I just want to celebrate that Pastor George, our India campus pastor here in Brandon area, but he pastors a church in Malayalam. He actually had 17 new people in his house group just this past week, and I just want to celebrate that. I think that's amazing, and Pastor George and all you guys from Arise India, love you guys. You guys are doing an absolutely great job. And if you didn't notice, so obviously things are different. We are kind of interrupting the series we've been doing called Long Story Short, where we're going through the Bible in 6 weeks. We're going to re-pick that up on Wednesday, and Pastor Ken's going to kind of focus on that on Midweek Oasis so that series doesn't end. But you can still kind of get some closure to that, right? All the type A's in the room are like, I got to have this end. And so you could get some closure through Midweek Oasis on Wednesday nights. But on Sundays right now, during this unique moment while we're walking through this pandemic together, we are in this series called Corona-votionals, clarity in times of chaos. And we need some clarity in these times. And so we're going to have some fun with that. All right, now, as we get started, let me share with you something, and I'm going to try not to brag, but something about myself that you may not know. In 1982, I was the Robles Elementary School milk carton building champion of the world. Okay, Robles Elementary School. And there was this assistant with me. I think her name was Natasha, and she used to hand me, remember the old school milk cartons? They look kind of like this right here. Remember those? And she would hand me those milk cartons, empty milk cartons, and we would stack them up. And they did a contest with the entire Robles Elementary School. And I remember getting in there, and I'm like, we're going to win this. And Natasha would hand me the things. We had a system, man. She would hand me the milk cartons. I would stack them up. And sure enough, out of the entire elementary school, we won. Yeah, I won. She won. Whatever. We won. And then we got to go to districts, which was so cool, right? So we go to districts after that, and districts was, or whatever it was called, is all the other elementary schools coming together. And so we actually from there went to Mosey. And back in the day, for you guys longtime Tampa people, you'll remember this, Mosey was different back then than it is now. A lot of it was open air, and they had these big, long porch-looking things all the way around it. And so we would go up into Mosey, and all these kids from all these elementary schools on this Saturday, which happened to be a windy day, on this Saturday, we would go and we would start building our milk cartons. Our milk carton castles. And so we get together, we start doing that, and we start building. And my parents are all excited. My brothers and sisters are there, and everybody's grinning ear to ear because I am the milk carton champion, right? And we're building. And every time we would get to, 2 foot high or something, this wind gust would come on, and it would just blow it down. And I was getting so frustrated because I'm like, we're going to win this thing. And it totally wasn't fair. For the record, it totally wasn't fair. I'm still bitter about this because there were other kids around the corner that weren't getting hit by the same air gusts, and their towers were obviously bigger than ours. So we didn't win districts, but just for the record, we could put this on my tombstone one day that I am the Robles Elementary School, me and Natasha, Robles Elementary School champion of milk carton building. So if you're like, why are we talking about milk carton building right here? We're talking about it because it actually fits really well with the message I'm about to bring to you and really what we're facing as a society right now when we talk about building our life on something that matters. And I think it's very relevant for where we are right now. So if you want to turn there, go to Matthew chapter number 7. And just so we catch everybody up, Matthew is this tax collector. And he is a tax collector, which is like the worst villain of all, turned follower of Jesus. And he starts following Jesus after Jesus is dead and buried and then resurrected and ascends into heaven. Matthew's sharing the gospel with people, telling everybody. And towards the end of his life later on, he realizes, I need to write this stuff down. I need to get this on pen and paper so that after I'm gone, others will know these stories about Jesus as well. And so Matthew does that, and it's really a biography of Jesus, and we call it Matthew, right? Pretty obvious. And so Matthew's taken this biography of Jesus so that 2,000 years later, we still know what Jesus said. Now, with that, in chapter 7, and really chapter, I think it's 5, 6, and 7 right there, Matthew is actually sharing what's called the Sermon on the Mount. It's Jesus' words. It's really his most famous sermon. Some would say it's the greatest sermon ever preached. I would be in that category. In fact, one day I'm gonna do a series called The Greatest Sermon Ever Preached, and people are gonna think I'm being vain and arrogant, but it's really about the Sermon on the Mount. Well, that's for another time. But this is the greatest sermon ever preached. It's really the mic drop moment for Jesus. He's coming up and it's like, holy moly, he just blew everybody's minds with the things he just said. And at the very end of that sermon, he says something that's going to relate to all the other chapters that he talked about, all the other things he talked about, loving your enemy, having peace, trusting God, all these things he's just talked about. The end of the message is going to tie it all together and make it important for people like you and I especially. So it looks like this. Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 through 27 says this. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rains came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash, right? It fell with a great crash. All right, let me give you 3 quick thoughts about this. While as we do this online ministry, hopefully it'll be a little shorter than usual, but I'm sure you've heard preachers say that before in the past, so we'll see. All right, let's start with this. These 2 men have some similarities. Let's look at these similarities real fast. First of all, they each wanted to build a house. Now, a house in this connotation, the metaphor that Jesus is using, is a house is their life. They want to build their life. They want to do something great with their life. And all of us are that way, right? Like we want to build our lives. We want to be something of significance. It's not that everybody wants to be famous, but we all want to be people that our lives matter. And after we are dead and gone, that people remember us and we made their lives better. And I think that's human nature. We want to be that. We want to leave this world a better place than the way we found it. So they, just like us, they want their lives to matter. Secondly, they each heard the words of Jesus. Apparently, as Jesus is talking, both of these 2 men in this story, both of them are hearing. And so they've heard these words. They both got the words into their ears, right? And so if we were put into a modern context, in some ways, maybe they're like people like us, most of us today. So most people today, not all, but most have at least know some of the words of Jesus. They're familiar with some of the teachings of Jesus. If nothing else, there's a lot of people that are Christmas saints and Easter saints, right? You come a few times a year. And in those moments, you are getting the words of life spoken over you and into you. So some might have it to a greater degree, but others might have it less. But in our world today, like these guys, we each hear the words of Jesus. And then the third thing right there I want us to see is they each encounter the same storm. This is so key because you know this, whether you are a fool or a wise man, no matter if you're rich or poor, famous or not, whatever, storms of life are going to come. Some storms are caused by ourselves, some are caused by other people, and some are just uncontrollable. Right now, we're a part of an uncontrollable storm that you didn't initiate, that wasn't caused by you, and now you just kind of are trapped in this hurricane of a storm called the coronavirus. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking it was kind of funny. I had this thought. I thought of some jokes I've heard recently, and they said, you're having a bad day when you call the suicide prevention line and you get put on hold. You're having a bad day when your birthday cake collapses under the weight of your candles, right? You're having a bad day when your wife says, "Good morning, Bill," and your name is George, right? Right, we've all had bad days, but this is even bigger than that, right? This is the storms of life. And Jesus doesn't say if the storms come or would they come or maybe they will come. There's just this assumption that the storms are going to come. And the Bible's very clear. It rains on the just and the unjust, rich or fool. Either way, storms are going to chase you down because you don't have to look for them. They're going to find you, right? And we are all in this storm together. You and I, all of us, that's why we're watching online right now. We're all in the storm together, which reminds me, we're all similar to these men. We all want to build a house. We're all familiar with the words of Jesus, and we all face storms. And right this second, we're all in one together. Now, this is where the similarities end, though, because from this point on, while both men would enter the storm, only one would survive the storm. This is where it's different. And this is where, just like Jesus talked to different people, I'm talking to different people right now. Because we all have entered this storm. Some of us will handle it a whole lot better than others. So, which is a little funny because if you picture the metaphor that Jesus is doing here with the house, both of the houses essentially look the same, right? If you're like me, you picture them, they got a front porch maybe, and they got windows and doors and a roof and, all this, they got a driveway. The houses essentially, they look the same. So what is the difference between the two? Well, the difference, as you know, because you just read the verse, the difference is the foundation. This is so huge. The difference is the foundation. See, the fool built his life on the sand. The fool built his life on the sand. Now, in Florida, we know something about sand. All right. Here is some good old-fashioned, beautiful Florida beach sand. We know something about sand. In fact, if you grew up in Florida like I did, we built sand castles all of our lives on the beach. We loved it. It was fun. But those same sand castles that we put up one moment were completely gone the next moment. So we know something about building something on sand and how that kind of plays out. So let me get a little bit more sand here and see how much I can get all over my iPad. All right, so now we have a bit of sand. All right, I'm going to get rid of this sand. So you have the one man. I'll get that. Oh, and then I just messed up my iPad. Let's see. What do I do? All right, so we had the one man who built his life on the sand. And where am I? Just lost my spot. One man who built his life on the sand. The other one, though, obviously, he built his life on the rock, right? And so we get this big old giant millstone right here. And so we got sand and we got rock. We got two different lives or lives being built on two different things. So sand is cheap. It's easy. You can go down to the beach. Rock takes some effort. It's some work to it. And so, but you can build your life on either one. But if you're going to build a life that goes high and far and is great, something that's worth remembering, you're going to have to build it on something that digs deep and goes into something solid. You ever seen the way a skyscraper is built? I was in Israel a few years ago, and we, outside of our hotel, they were preparing to build a skyscraper, and they had this lot, and they had a fence around it. I remember sticking my head in the fence, and it was just, I don't know, it had to be 100 feet straight down, a giant square that had been put down into the ground where they were preparing to build a high-rise hotel. And I was like, holy moly. Because the fact is, if you're going to build something high, if you're going to go somewhere in height, you've also got to have the depth to go alongside of it. You got to have both. It's not either or, it's both and. And you cannot build a skyscraper on playground sand. In fact, I would say it this way. Lots of people want skyscraper lives with play sand foundations. See, here's the thing. We all want to build that life, yet we don't all do it. We all want to make a difference, yet we don't all do it. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is because we're not willing to pay the price. It's easy to build a sandcastle. It's a whole nother thing to chisel out rock and fight through rock. I brought a hammer with me. It's so much easier to work with sand than it is to work with rock. You got to chisel, you got to fight with it in order to make it what you want it to be. But once you do that, it'll last forever, right? Or at least a really long time because it's made out of something strong. And here's the big thing that we want to see. We build on a strong foundation when we apply Jesus' teachings. This is what he's talking about right here. So I have some milk cartons. Mike, can you help me with this? And so if you build on a weak foundation, you build on a foundation like sand, maybe you get I'm a pro at this, right? I'm a pro. I'm really good. I know what I'm doing. I've been to Robles Elementary School. I passed the test. I knocked this out of the park in kindergarten. So this is my thing right here. I got this. All right, give me some more of those. All right, so we build on this foundation that's sand. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, but we have both, well, this is an example, isn't it? No, we have both white milk and chocolate milk because we are equal opportunity people here. All milk matters. So we build our lives on this. Let me see how I can do this. Make it anything I can do to make it extra cool. We build our lives on sand, and that's one way of doing it. And because the fact is that they each had knowledge. Both of them had knowledge. Both of them had heard the words of God. And it's kind of like some people that will come to me on Sunday morning and they're like, Pastor, that word was for me. And I'm like, yes, that's awesome. I'm so glad that word was for you. And then like the next week, they haven't actually applied any of the thing of that word that was for them, right? Anybody feel guilty of that? I know I've been guilty of that myself. It's like God speaks to you. You love it. It sounds good. It's fresh, but you don't actually apply any of it. And sometimes we're more concerned with hearing God's voice than actually applying what God's voice is saying, which is a dangerous thing because strength comes from application. Strength comes from application. You actually encounter strength. You're empowered when you have application, not just the knowledge of it, right? I mean, the fact is we all have home gyms, or not we all, but many of us have home gyms. We got some kind of weights. We got some kind of treadmill that we had this awesome idea about, but we never get on it. We never lift the weights. We never do whatever. We have these great intentions, but the fact is strength comes from application. That weight bench is not going to make you stronger. That treadmill is not going to help you lose weight unless you actually apply it to your life, right? I was thinking about this. I heard one preacher say it this way. I love this illustration. He was talking about motion censored lights. And I was thinking about that in our church world because we have all these motion censored lights everywhere. And in our offices, the motion censored lights in the bathroom, like you can't get them to come on sometimes because we got so much stuff kind of stored in there and stuff that's covering the motion sensor a little bit. And so it's so funny. So people will walk in and then they're looking for a light switch everywhere. And even if you know it's there, you're walking in and you're doing like this number, just trying to like get the motion censored light to come on. And this is what I want you to see because this is so important. The power was always there. The light was already there. The electricity was already run. What they needed, what we need to get the motion censored light to come on is motion. Here's the thing with you and I. What we need to have the power of God working in our lives is motion. We have to, faith is a verb. We have to step into it. God's power comes on us when movement happens. So many times we're waiting for God to show up, waiting for God to do something, listening, forming committees, talking about what it would be like, instead of actually applying it and acting on it. And when you do that, it's a whole nother thing. Because when you do that, you start building on a hard surface. You start building on the rock. Because we walk by faith, we don't talk by faith. So Mike, help me out with the other ones here. Oh man, I'm a champ, man. You could have given me the rest of those. Come on. So if we have this, we build on faith, right? And so this is a little easier to build on than sand is. Let me see. So we're walking by faith. We're not talking by faith because faith is an action word. We're going to do something with it. We're going to build something upon it. We're going to have real faith. Real faith. Do we have any more? Come on, man. I'm a pro. We can do this. We can do this. Don't have a lack of faith. Come on. All right, there we go. Look at that. Look at that. I'm going to cover everybody up, and then I'll get in trouble from Pastor Mike. But let me see the other two. I got to finish out the sand too. Look at that. Don't everybody applaud at home at one time. Come on. This is pretty amazing. And this is where you guys at home are like, you are a complete idiot. Can't believe you're my pastor. Anyway, okay. So it's not about how much Bible you memorize. It's how much you actually apply that Bible. It's not about how many times you go to church and experience God. It's about what you do with those experiences. It's already fallen. All right, hand me those, Mike. Let's do the next one here. Here we go. It's because the sand is shifting underneath. Can we get the other one? Just one more. Okay. Try not to touch anything. All right, so it's about applied knowledge. Applied knowledge. It's not just knowing it, it's doing it. You have to apply the hand sanitizer on your hands right now, right? You don't just know you should, right? It's the middle school boy. You don't just know you should put deodorant on. All the moms and dads are like, middle school boy, put the deodorant on, right? And that's kind of where it is right there. So we want to apply knowledge, not just have knowledge. And that's really what James is talking about. This is the brother of Jesus. And he says this, James says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. In other words, God spoke to me, I heard it, it was good, and I walked away and I didn't implement any of it. I didn't understand it. I didn't take it to the next level anytime. So here's the thing. Many people add God into their lives later, but not as the foundation. Now, this is the story of most of America. We are far more interested in making God a tapestry on our life, making God a decoration on our life, than we are of actually making God the foundation of our life. We're more interested in having golden toilets in our house than having the foundation right in our house. But if you have golden toilets and you don't have the right foundation, your whole house is going to end up crumbling. So you don't start with man and then add God to it. You start with God and then add man to it. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you don't start with, I get married and then I'm gonna say, God bless my marriage. I don't start with, I'm gonna have kids and then somewhere along the line, I'm like, oh God, I wanna invite you into this. No, you start with God and then you say, God, you are my foundation. Now, as my foundation, what do I do in my marriage? As my foundation, what do I do with my dating life? What do I do with my career? What do I do with my finances? And you make God the foundation, not something you add in later on. See, far too often we try to mix and match, right? So we want a little bit of God here and we want a little bit of the world here and our own wants and desires here. And we try to mix and match and put them together, which actually also creates a wrong foundation. That's so common in our world today. I was thinking about that and thinking how right here in our midst, we have Moreno's Bakery, which I absolutely love. Their deli and bakery. And I go over there and there's a spinach dish that they make. Now, first of all, let me say this. I hate spinach. I do not like spinach whatsoever. It's nasty. Don't like spinach. If you like spinach, I love you. I don't like spinach. But when I go there, they have this stuff. It's called spinach gratin. It's like this cream of spinach kind of thing. Their cream of spinach is amazing. Their cream of spinach is amazing. It's so good. And I was thinking about that. And here's the simple fact. I like it not because of the spinach. I like it because of all the other stuff. They put a bunch of cream cheese and all this other kind of stuff in it. And I like it because of all the other stuff. But the fact is, I don't get the health benefits of eating spinach because the health benefits of spinach are actually canceled out because of what's added to it, right? So many times we do that in our lives, right? So we have got our thing and we've got God's thing, and we have the benefits of building on the right foundation in God, but we cancel it out because I want my own thing and I want it better over here. And it ends up canceling it out in the long runs. And the fact is, at the end of the day, all of us who are Floridians especially, we know that when you build a sandcastle, eventually the rains will knock it down. Eventually the rains will destroy it. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is, how amazing it is. The sandcastles do not last. And far too often we're building that way. So here is the point. This is where I'm going to. This is where I want us to see as we get ready to wrap up. Storms reveal our foundation. Right? So we already said that our foundation matters, but how do you know if you got the right foundation or not? Here's the thing. Storms like we're facing right now are an important part of our life. Because when that storm comes, it's actually a gauge that's going to reveal what foundation we built our lives on. So will it last or will it not? So I want to pull out trusty old box fan right here. Let's see which foundation actually lasts. On the rock or on the sand? Yeah, so you see what happens. You know, it's a silly illustration. You knew what was going to happen. You got that. It's a silly illustration. But when the winds come, when the waves start lashing against you, when the hurricanes of life come, the storms of life, the tornadoes of life, when all hell breaks loose against you, you will find out how deep your roots are and what your roots are in that moment. Because some of us will have our lives knocked over, while others of us will have our lives perfectly fine and not knocked over. So your reaction to this storm will actually show your foundation. This is so key. How you have reacted and how you continue to react will show which foundation we're actually building on. So if we are reacting in fear, that is a reaction of sand. If we are reacting in faith, and that doesn't mean that we don't have some inner, turmoil inside of us sometimes. But if we're reacting and saying, God, you are in charge. I have confidence in you, even in the midst of this storm. That's the right foundation. If you're reacting in self-preservation and you're running out and you're buying all the toilet paper, right? And you're buying all the Clorox wipes and all that kind of stuff that you don't really need, but just out of fear, and you're reacting out of selfishness and self-preservation, then your life is on the wrong foundation. It's on the sand. If you are acting out of selflessness and only buying what you need, and even if you have extra, passing it out to other people that you know are in need, then your life is built on the foundation. So your reaction during a crisis like this actually says what true foundation your life is built on. It could be leaning like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which, Pisa means marsh. There's not enough hardness in the ground. And so that means marsh. And so it's leaning way over and about to fall, and they keep trying to hold it up. But that's what it means. Are we putting the principles and the application of God's word into our life? One time Jesus said it this way. Jesus said, "Why do you call me Lord? Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say?" Let that sink in. That's a hard one. That'll step on toes all the way through cameras, all the way through tablets and iPhones and computer laptops and things like that. Why do you call me Lord and not do what I say? That is the key. It's not going to church. It's not Bible memorization. It's, are you applying the word of God to your life and living it out? Because as you do that, especially during this crisis, you will be like a city on a hill. You will stand out in a crowd. You will be someone that others look to find peace and hope, and you will be a carrier of God's presence. So, wrap it up with this. Jesus made it clear. Rains are going to come and winds will beat against your life. Storms are going to come, whether you are just or unjust, whether you're a fool or a wise person, doesn't matter. Storms are going to come. But if you put his teachings into practice in your life, in the problems that you face, you will stand the test of time. And this is the key. Either the storm will pass or you will pass through the storm. Either this storm is going to pass or you will pass through the storm. But either way, you will survive what you're going through. And some of us have storms upon storms. This Corona crisis that jumped into our worlds, we already had storms going on before this jumped in. You already had financial struggles and marital struggles and struggles with your kids and struggles with school or whatever. You already had storms. And then you got another one thrown on top of you. This storm is either going to pass or you will pass through the storm. I think of the three little pigs. And the wolf said, "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." And it really determined what their foundation, what their house was built upon and on. That's what actually determined whether they blew their house down or not. So let me ask you this one huge, massive question that will help you reveal what's going on in your foundation. Remember, all the houses look the same on the outside. You probably don't look a lot different than your coworkers until a storm comes. What's one big question that's going to reveal your foundation? It's this. When storms come, where do you run? This is huge. Think about this. When the storms of life come in your life, where are you running to? Some people will run to a bar. Some people will run to the pantry and start making some comfort food, some biscuits and gravy. Some people will run to their bank account and make sure that they still have money there. Where do you run in the midst of a storm? Because that will tell you where your foundation is.